Saturday mornings belonged to your grandmother. That was just how it was. She had her list, thread, a card of bobby pins, maybe nylon stockings from the hosiery counter, and you followed her through the store while she worked through it. And when the last item was found and paid for, the two of you walked to the back together. You climbed onto one of the chrome stools at the lunch counter. It spun. She let it spin once, then put her hand on your shoulder. The woman behind the counter came over, looked at your grandmother, and said "honey" without even thinking about it. She already had the coffee order in her head. That was the whole ritual. Every Saturday. Every Woolworth's in America. For as long as anyone could remember. The counter ran along the back wall of the store, chrome and white formica, stools that turned on their posts, a glass case at one end with slices of pie rotating slowly under a soft light. Coffee was 15 cents and came back without asking. A large Coca-Cola was a dime, poured over ice from the fountain. The grilled cheese came on white bread pressed flat on the griddle, cut on the diagonal, pickle on the side. The hot dog dinner was 50 cents. The hamburger was 40 cents on a toasted bun with relish or onion. Simple food, honest prices, nothing fancy about any of it. But here is the thing nobody quite says out loud when they talk about what Woolworths meant. The lunch counter was not a restaurant. Not really. It was a place, and for a whole generation of American children, it was the first place they ever sat down at a counter and ordered something. Not a special dinner somewhere with tablecloths, not a birthday treat, just a regular Saturday, a chrome stool, a woman who called you honey, and a grilled cheese on a white plate. That is not a small memory to carry. That is the first feeling of being somewhere outside your own house that was made for you. Frank Winfield Woolworth opened his first store in Lancaster, Pennsylvania on June 21st, 1879. His idea fit on one line: sell everything for 5 or 10 cents, put the merchandise where customers can touch it themselves instead of asking a clerk, and keep the prices honest enough that anyone who walks through the door feels welcome. It worked from the very first week. A second store followed, then 10, then 100. By 1912, there were over 600 Woolworth locations across the country. By 1979, a full century after that first Lancaster store, Woolworths had grown into the largest department store chain in the United States. The tower Frank Woolworth built in New York City in 1913 was the tallest building in the world at the time. 57 stories of Gothic limestone, paid for entirely in cash, because Woolworth did not like debt and never had reason to carry it. The lunch counters came later, added store by store, as Woolworth realized something simple. Shoppers who spent 2 or 3 hours inside a store got hungry, and if there was nowhere to eat inside the building, they left to find food somewhere else, and sometimes did not come back. The first counters were modest: coffee, a sandwich, nothing more. By the 1940s and 1950s, they had grown into something that stretched the full length of the back wall in most stores, staffed by women who ran the operation with a calm efficiency that made it look easy. Here is something worth understanding about those women. They did not write things down. They did not need to. A grandmother who came in every Saturday for 15 years and always ordered coffee with a little cream and a slice of apple pie did not have to say, on February 1st, 1960, at 4:30 in the afternoon, 4 young men walked into the Woolworths at 132 South Elm Street in Greensboro, North Carolina. Their names were Ezell Blair Jr., Franklin McCain, Joseph McNeil, and David Richmond. They were freshmen at North Carolina Agricultural and Technical College, 20 years old or close to it. They had been thinking about this particular afternoon for some time. They stopped near the front of the store first. Here is what the management had not fully thought through. That lunch counter was profitable. It sat along the back wall of one of the company's flagship stores, packed at lunchtime, busy on Saturday mornings, Steady revenue every day the store was open. Every week that those 4 young men held their seats, and then the dozens who joined them, and then the hundreds who filled the store until there was barely room to stand, was a week of lost business. The protests spread to other cities. The national press was covering it. The losses kept climbing. By July of 1960, after nearly $200,000 in lost revenue, more than $2 million by today's measure, the store manager quietly called 4 of his black kitchen employees aside. Their names were Geneva Tisdale, Susie Morrison, Anitha Jones, and Charles Bess. He told them to change out of their work uniforms, walk around the store for a few minutes like they were shopping, and then come to the counter and take a seat. Geneva Tisdale had worked behind that counter for years. She had made the sandwiches, prepared the food, kept the kitchen running, all for customers who were allowed to sit at the counter. She was not. On July 25th, 1960, she walked around the floor with her shopping bag, came to the counter, and sat down. She ordered an egg salad sandwich. She ate it quickly, because the manager had warned her that once word got out, the newspaper people would be through the door within minutes. She was right about that. Geneva Tisdale stayed at that Woolworth's for 33 more years. When the Greensboro store finally closed in 1993, she was the last remaining employee who had been there on February 1st, 1960. A reporter asked her on the final day what she felt had changed. She thought about it. Then she said she still believed that a white person in her position would be paid more than her, just because of the color of their skin. That had not changed. A section of the original counter, 8 feet long, 4 stools, was removed by local carpenters the day the store closed and donated to the Smithsonian Institution in Washington. Thousands of people see it every year. The lunch was never the point, of course. The right to sit down was the point. But it happened back at that counter on a regular Saturday in 1965. The menu was not very different from what your grandmother remembered from 20 years before. The vegetable soup was 30 cents and made from scratch every morning. The roasted turkey with mashed potatoes was the kind of hot lunch that a woman working downtown could eat at the counter in 40 minutes and be back at her desk on time. The baked Swiss steak smothered in brown gravy was slow and satisfying and cost almost nothing to order. In 1969, you could sit down at a Woolworth's counter in Columbus, Ohio, and eat a full steak dinner, steak, French fries, salad, and a roll, for 99 cents. A glass of lemonade was 15 cents on the side. The egg cream is worth explaining on its own, because the name does not help you at all. There is no egg in it. There is no cream. What there is, in the classic version, is chocolate syrup at the bottom of a tall glass, whole milk poured in and stirred, and then cold seltzer added fast enough to raise a thick white foam at the top. You drink it right away, before the foam settles. The whole thing takes less than a minute to make, and it produces something cold and chocolate and fizzy. And then there was the pie. Apple, cherry, lemon meringue, depending on the day, served on a white plate with a fork and a folded paper napkin. The lemon meringue on a good day had 3 inches of meringue standing above the filling, and if you happened to be sitting at the counter when a fresh one came out of the kitchen, the woman would lean toward you and say it quietly. Not an announcement, just, "Lemon pie just came out, if you want a piece." You always wanted a piece. Here is the bigger thing underneath all of this. The Woolworth's lunch counter was never trying to be anything more than what it was. There was no concept behind it, no positioning, no target demographic. It was simply a counter at the back of a store where you could sit down, eat something honest for a fair price, and be treated like someone who belonged there. The woman who served you had been on her feet behind that counter long enough to know what you wanted before you opened your mouth. That is what is gone. Not the grilled cheese, not the cherry Coke, not even the chrome stools that spun. You can find versions of all those things still, in diners that have held on. What you cannot find is the woman who... What the company became after that is something most people do not know. It changed its name to Venator, shifted into specialty retail, and then in 2001 became something you will recognize immediately. Foot Locker. The largest department store chain in the history of the United States, the company that built the tallest building in the world and gave a generation of American children their first lunch at a counter, is now set. Geneva Tisdale ordered an egg salad sandwich on July 25, 1960, and she ate it fast because the newspaper people were coming. She had been making that sandwich for years on the other side of that counter. She went on making it, and everything else on that menu, for 33 more years after that day. She knew how you liked your egg salad before you sat down. She always had. Memory Lane, America. One story at a time.